Today, I would like to welcome everyone to the men's room for a special edition with Swier Miedema. And what we're going to be going down today is his journey to becoming an upcoming book author. He is a transformative human practitioner and more. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Swier, to tell us a little bit about what it is that got you started on your journey to writing your book, Being Resilient.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity, Linda. I'm very happy with it. Um, what I did is about 7 years ago, I ran into an understanding, and I, I was searching for it because um, I have been in change management consultant, for a long time, over 25 years. But I wasn't happy with the way we did that because about 70 to 90% of those change projects failed or never really worked out. Yeah, we changed everything and everything was different and everything was, but never really got a real result. I wasn't happy with that. Um, and then in 2012, I decided I want to do this in a different way because I'm not getting anywhere. So I quit my job and I started my own consultancy. First, as called with the name of strength management, but later I found out it wasn't about management. Um, then in 2018, it was, I think, yeah, 2018, I ran into the understanding of the three principles, which is been worded for the first time by a gentleman called Sydney Banks. He was a Scottish welder and lived in Canada. He worked for a pulp works where they made pulp for paper and stuff like that. And he had, at some stage, he had some kind of epiphany. He found out, wait a minute, all these worries in my head, all these sorrows, all these non-helping experiences are just a result of my own thinking. And I had a lady who explained this to me in half an hour, and it hit me like a freight train. Because I suddenly understood, wait a minute, this is the understanding we need to make sense of what's going on in our head. So I started studying it like a madman, really. And I tried to read anything and view everything and listen to anything I could find at that time. And after 2 years' time, I had a strange experience because one morning I started at work here in my little attic room and my head went silent. There were no thoughts in my head. And at first I was shocked. Wait a minute, what's going on here? What, my brain is working anymore. I'm not going. I'm, I, so am I dying? No, I wasn't. And then I realized, wait a minute, this is exactly what I wanted to achieve, wanted to arrive at, to find that my thinking isn't controlling me anymore. And that's what's happening to all of us. Our thinking is controlling us, more or less. And it makes sense, of course, because it's the only way, really the only way we can make sense of what's happening to us. Because what we do when we think, we relate it to our memory, and memory then tells you, oh, it's this and this and this. And I'm looking at Linda. I'm doing this podcast and so on. So I know where I am, what I'm doing, so I can relate to that and I can react to that. And it's amazing that we do have that capacity, but it's also very confusing because what happens is we get confused. We get confused about the quality of our thinking because part of our thinking is influenced by our brain, which is crazy because everything, oh, you're thinking with your brain. No, you're not thinking with your brain. Science has been looking at this for 25 years now, and they cannot find the part of your brain which is thinking. They can't even find the part of your brain which is responsible for your consciousness. They can't find it. So there's something else is happening. And what I've figured out, and I'm not sure it's true because I'm no scientist. I'm just a funny guy who's trying to get his fingers behind this. And what I found out is we have two types of thinking. We have brain-oriented thinking, which helps you get through life, and it's related to your brain. We get all kinds of influxes from our brain. Wait a minute, this tea is too hot. Don't put it in your mouth. Stuff like that. And we have moments when we have inspiration, and we all know those moments when you have a shower in the morning and you suddenly say, "Oh yes, of course, that's how I fix that." And that is, and you don't know where that comes from. You can't find the source for that. And I think that's coming from, well, somewhere else. I don't know where it comes from. And I tend to look at our brain as a sort of recipient for all kinds of information and doing stuff with that. Okay. Okay. And what that does is it makes us confused because we cannot discern what is your inspirational thinking and what's your brain thinking. Let's call it that way. And just made this up. Um, and this is a process where I'm going through it right now because I'm starting to understand. Well, starting to understand that there's a difference between the two, and we have to be aware of that. And the funny thing is, it gets a habit. Thinking gets a habit because it helps us make sense of what's going on. And it helps you to decide what action you're going to take for the next moment. So what we do is throughout our lives, we tend to develop a lot of routines, simple programmed activities, which you do all the time. When I pick up a coffee cup, which is empty now, by the way, but anyway, when I pick up a coffee cup, I don't have to think about that. Which is great because if I had to think about that, nothing else would come out of my hands. Would have been busy picking up the coffee cup. And that's so it's very useful to have this program. But the problem is when I use my programmed mood and I'm talking to you, you'll say you're not there. I'm not having really a conversation with you because you're doing this all kinds of an automatic response to what I'm doing. And we know that because we do that sometimes in our relationships, which doesn't help because the other one immediately notices, you're not talking to me. You're just talking around. And it's funny that, well, the great thing about automating your thinking is it's helpful because it reduces your energy, it reduces your time to spend on that. So it helps you be more productive. And you probably have seen those little movies, those videos on YouTube and TikTok, and where these people do these things amazingly fast, folding a T-shirt in a special way in 3 folds or something like that. And he said, "Wow, that's looking great." Yeah, and it's a program, but we create a program about ourselves. So who we are is actually a program. And that program tends to take control.
I love where you're going with all of this. And my mind is just like taking it all in here. And you spoke to how thinking is what's controlling us. And, the quality of our thoughts matters because our brain is like a program. And so you talked about the things that come to us like second nature, like eating and drinking, making decisions, and then those moments of real true inspiration that can happen to us out of nowhere. And I thought it was really interesting that you had said that they couldn't really find this thinking part of the brain. But yeah, that's how we exist. And the habits that we use to go out in the world, you're speaking to it in a little different way than I've heard about how our habits give us how we make sense of the world. And so I guess I am thinking that what you're describing is not mindfulness, because mindfulness is where you're present in the moment, you are not really thinking about anything. Whereas here, we are paying attention to our thinking, but we can discern between what's helpful and what's not helpful. And that is where you had that light bulb moment that this could actually help us in the way that we live and we work and we interact with the world. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, absolutely. And it's good you bring that up. It is so important. And it's most of the time, I say this in the first meeting we have with my clients. I said, there are two ways of looking at your own thinking. You have helpful thoughts or helpful experiences because your thought defines what you experience. And you have non-helping thoughts and experiences. And the funny thing is, a non-helpful experience very often isn't really getting you anywhere. It's only it has the same four effects all the time. It'll make you feel awful. It'll cost you heaps of energy because you're working with, I don't know about you, but well, I get them less and less. But so when I have a fight with my wife, I'm spent afterwards. I spend a lot of time on that conversation with my wife when I have a fight. I have them less and less. Luckily, I'm so happy about that. Still, but I used to have them. And the funny thing is, it takes a lot of time because I'm trying to solve it. I'm trying to get rid of it. I don't want this. It makes me feel awful. And the saddest thing is, afterwards, you'll be thinking, what was I thinking? What happened here? This wasn't worth what I was all spend all the energy and time on. So why am I doing this? And it's the fact of that is because it's coming from your brain, which is trying to keep you safe, actually, and it's trying to to influence you to do some stuff in a specific way somewhere. Sorry, there's a program which is noisy. Let me get it out. And the funny thing is, I understood at some stage, and that's exactly what Sydney Banks said, I don't have to pay attention to those non-helping thoughts. Because 99 out of 100, they're not doing anything. Nothing happens when I just disregard them. Nothing happens. And when something happens, I know what to do. I know what to step aside when a bus is trying to run me over, or when I'm slipping on the ice or something like that. I know what to do. We have been very successful as a human species in this world. We exist for 2.5 million years. We dominate this planet, so we know how to respond in a moment. We know that intuitively, instinctively. We know that. So we know how this works. And the sad thing about that is we were wasting time and energy on that. And on the other hand, if you have a helping thought, it will make you feel great. It gives you energy. The sad thing is it's over before you know it. And afterwards you'll be grateful for yourself, or maybe with for the person you shared it with. And it only brings you up. So why would you spend energy and time on non-helping experiences, non-helping thoughts? So the only thing you have to do is look at your brain, and you can do that. You can walk into a supermarket or a store and say, oh yeah, I now have to make a list because I need to make my shopping for Christmas and I need to have the right ingredients and so on and so on. Let me have a think. Oh yeah, I need the potatoes and whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But there you're looking at your thoughts. We can look at our thoughts ourselves. And that's amazing because we can really take that distance. And when you learn to take that little bit of distance, in the end, your brain will go silent. And then suddenly that monkey on your shoulder or the brass band in your head will shut up. And it's at the first time you notice that it's shocking. It was shocking to me anyway. But when it happens, you suddenly hear the wooden flute who was playing that all along. You'll hear what's really worthwhile. And then you suddenly realize, I don't have to bother so much about what's coming at my brain and what my brain is telling me. And what happens then is that about 30 to 50% of your thinking is unnecessary, so you can skip it, which leaves more thinking capacity, more clarity in your brain, more capacity to do better things, easier things, wonderful things. And that's, sorry, go ahead. Yes.
So what you're saying is quite fascinating. But it's so simple and so elemental and so basic. You're talking about how you can catch yourself in these thoughts and decide whether or not you're going to give it significance, whether or not you're going to give it your time and energy, and whether it's going to be helpful or hurtful to you to continue on that path. And you just made a great visual for me in the fact that you could put a lot of time and energy into a negative thought. It's draining, it makes you feel awful, it doesn't serve you, it's just terrible. Or you can choose to be in that more resilient state where you're having a good thought, you share it, you believe it, and then it's a quick thing, and you said it's happening before you really like get to think about it too much, and it's over. But yet
Yeah.
you spent a lot less energy in that positive resilience place, whereas you could have spent all of your energy in that other place. And so that reminds me of what I also share with clients, and that's the fact that once you can have that awareness and you're
Mm-hmm.
conscious of those voices or those things that are going on in your head, and you can reframe those in a way, you can turn off that negative, draining energy on a dime. So instead of spending lots of energy feeling really upset and angry for 2 days, you could do it in a matter of 2 minutes
Seconds.
and move forward. And then you feel in your whole body, really, you feel freer, you feel peace, you move on. You're like, oh, this is great. So I guess the question that our listeners might have is, what if you're that other person that doesn't have that built up resilience to be able to bounce back like that, and they find themselves in this other direction where it's draining negative energy? What practices, and again, we're trying not to put a lot of steps into doing something, but what practice could they consider when they find themselves so that they can move towards the resilience that we're describing?
The beauty of this is that we are endowed with an infallible method to judge that. It's your feeling. You know when something is less than neutral. You feel that. We feel that in our body. Everyone. When something is less than neutral, don't spend any attention to it. Just discard it. As soon as it's a crisis, your body will tell you, now you need to intervene. When it's not a crisis, just drop it. And yes, it needs training. You need to train yourself to do that. You need to learn to grab yourself by the ears for some way, mentally by the ears, and say, "Oh, I'm not going down that way." Because what happens when we have a negative thought? We couple a next negative thought to it. Oh, there's a man following me in the street. Should I be worried now? That's a second thought. And oh, he's wearing a large coat. He he wouldn't be wearing a weapon or something like that. And There you go. There, the whole thought train is going down the drain or down the valley or whatever you would like to call it, and you're getting scared. And the problem is, as soon as we're in a train like that, it feels like you cannot get out of it. But you can. You can even let yourself fall out of that train and you won't even hurt because it's nothing. It's just a thought. It's a very small potential difference in your brain which hasn't any power over you. But we think it has power because it's our only way of making sense of the world. So the trick is, if we learn, and it's so simple, if we learn to listen to our feelings, feeling not okay or less than okay. Okay, neutral is okay because we can go through the day when you're neutral. Okay, it's not a great day, but everything's happening and everything's going on, and yeah, okay, we all have those days. It's fine. But as soon as it's negative, your brain starts sending signals into your body. Something's not okay, so you have to take action on this. And there you go. And if you prevent that, then your brain isn't sending those signals into your body, and you won't feel that throat being uh, drawn or something, or your stomach is aching, or your legs are feeling like elastic or something like that. I don't know. Everyone has different reactions, and we are all unique in that. And the great thing about this is when we learn to pay less attention to this, your life just lightens up. And you lighten up. And people notice that. Wait, hey, what's happened to you? Well, nothing has happened to me, but I understand now how I create my reality. Because we create our reality constantly. And we live in that self-created reality. And if you make it a happy one, it's much more fun to be there than you have a sad one. Does it make sense?
Yes, that is so true. You know, a lot of times people don't realize that we do create our reality with those thoughts, and whether or not we allow them in, or we, like you said, you can discard, you can drop them, you can let go, you can do all these things. And, you know,
Well, yeah, and there's a point there. Let me,
oh, go ahead, go.
if you allow me. Yeah, we have been conditioned to understand that in a certain way, because when we were like this, we started walking. And of course, your parents were over the moon by the fact that you were walking, because it's no small feat. Absolutely not. The average child, when it when it walks, it falls 500 times on average. The average adult who tries something new and it doesn't work, he stops after three efforts. So there is something there. And it's no small feat, by all means. But also what happens in that situation, the child is praised into heaven by his parents. So he makes the conclusion, oh, when I do something, when the world around me appreciates, I'm okay. And we push that forward to kindergarten, primary school, middle school, high school, a college, university, life. Because if you perform better, you get better salary. It works that way. Or if you have a higher rank, you get a better salary. We are constantly pushing that message through. And even in advertisements, if you take this pill, you'll feel happy. No, you won't feel happy because of telling you feel well, for a moment you feel happy, but then it goes away again. And we cannot be happy all the time. It's impossible because life happens to us. And what could happen? I don't think so. I don't think it could. But a truck could drive into my house. This moment doesn't, but it could. And then I could be dead. Yeah, that's life. We don't know what's going to happen. And the problem is we are constantly worrying of what's going to happen. So that's where our worry comes from. And that's why we get anxious. Then we construct that as a way of looking at things, and then we get anxious all the time. Then we get panic attacks. And there we go again. So it's all self-created based on this conditioning we have had from as a child. We have to learn to lose that conditioning and look at the world in an open and well receptive way, because we know naturally how to respond in the moment. And yes, sometimes we do stupid things. I told you I had this accident many years ago where I was hit by a car while running, and it was a stupid accident because I talked to I never talked to the man, but my wife talked to the man who hit me. And he said, yeah, I was planning to turn right, but I decided to turn straight on. And then when I saw your husband, I panicked and hit the accelerator. So he hit me with 50 kilometers an hour, which is about 30 miles or something like that. So I was catapulted into the air and landed 10 meters, 10 yards further, with 3 brain contusions, which took me 5 years to recover. But the funny thing is, we as a human species have so much capacity of recovering. I have seen these things with people I cannot explain, where they recovered from things which have been amazing. And the funny thing is, I feel now fitter than I felt 10 years ago. Because when you start or you stop believing your negative thoughts, what happens is your stress lowers as well, because you don't have to worry about that anymore. And when your stress lowers, your whole physique increases. And so what I did earlier this year is to postpone my retirement. Because there's so much to do still, and there's so much to enjoy, and I love doing this work because it's so rewarding. I had a lady who came to me who'd been suffering from panic attacks for 23 years. Can you imagine? 23 years. She even started drinking as a result of that, and she had already control of the drinking by the time she came to me. But she came to me, and I explained her, well, in general words, what I just explained, and then she decided to take a program with me for 5 conversations. And after the 5 conversations, she said, Swier, you know, I never had a panic attack after our first conversation anymore. The 5 conversations which came after, which were solidifying my understanding of what's happening, what's going on, and how I do that, and helped me train myself to not believe my anxious thoughts. But after the first conversation, it was already gone. And I only got one customer like that. I don't have many like that, but it's amazing how that happens. And I had a young man come to me who had also anxiety, but I just explained, it's your thinking, it's your own thinking which creates that. And it's so important that we understand that we have been taught in the wrong way. And it's such a shame, because it can spoil your life. And there's so much to enjoy. Life is beautiful if you only see it.
You definitely make the case for the change that people are after. And the fact that we've been conditioned for many years, as you described, to, move towards things that give us instant gratification, and anything less than that, oh my gosh, our life is miserable. And you make a very illustrative point about the panic attacks, because conditioning, like we've been exposed to, and like in the case of a panic attack, something comes up because of a thought. oh, that must be
Mm.
really true. And then you have all these worries that happen. And then maybe something might distract you for a moment. So you stop the worry, you stop the thinking,
And it's
and the
gone.
panic, it's gone. So the trick in all of this, because we use the word trick, but maybe what is the catalyst in all of this is really um finding those moments and catching ourselves so that we're not going through all those iterations. And so the muscle that we're building is to do it quicker and faster, and to realize that our life, as you have described it earlier, can have a neutral day to it, where we're not really uh, euphoric and we're not really down in the dumps, but we're somewhere in between. And to have more days like those, because actually you don't want to be on either end of the spectrum, going up and down and riding the waves quite in that way. But that's what the world conditions us to do.
Hmm.
And a lot of people struggle with the
Oh
imbalance
yeah.
from one emotion to another. And when we listen to our feelings and how things show up in our bodies, and we recondition or relearn that we have control over our thoughts, and making them productive in a way that we can have this lightening up, less stress, what it does is it opens up our world so that we can move through it much more easily with less stress. And if you have less stress, you can do amazing, great things. And that's the conditioning that we would want to wire ourselves for. But that's not where a lot of the world is. We're in this
No.
rat race where everyone's trying to uh outperform themselves and everyone else. And if they're not consistent in their delivery of whatever they're doing, they get into this space of all this doing all the time. And what you're
Hmm.
advocating for is more like, let go ahead, it's okay to do, but let's go ahead and be who we are, and choose wisely what's serving us well and what's not. And it is something that it will take most people a lifetime to learn. Or in your case, you had a couple situations that kind of gave you a wake-up call, and you had choices about how you were either going to be resilient and recover from that accident, or you could go the other path where you didn't, and it took you a long time. I mean, that was a more physical example, but
Hmm.
mentally we can get to a place where we're not in that place of misery. And because ruminating thoughts and panic attacks aren't how I want to live. and and
Hmm.
and it doesn't help you be productive in your relationships with your family and friends. It doesn't make
Absolutely.
you productive in the workplace. It's a lose lose. And you know I've heard a lot of people say too, well, you can't go into all this positivity all the time either, but that's not what we're talking to. We're talking
No.
about, and you had said this, and the words that you used were important, but you talked about helpful and non-helpful,
Yeah.
which is different than positive or negative, or even the word of I'm trying to
Uh,
think. There's some other words that we use when we're talking about that, because helpful and not helpful, that to me is that secret way that you can frame this whole conversation.
Yeah, it helps a lot, and we have this infallible way of judging that by just feeling. And I'm starting to consider feeling as a different way of thinking, sort of thinking, but not exactly. Well, and then what I often say is thinking and feeling are two sides of the same coin, and because they're interrelated. Once you think something, you have a feeling about it, and then you judge it, and then you act on it. And that's where psychology has it backward, because they are focusing on your behavior, on your actions. But that's the end result. And the funny thing about that is, if you're trying to change behavior or actions from people, you're trying to change the symptoms. So it's symptomology, which isn't really helping. You can take an aspirin against your headache, but you might also have a hole in your head, for instance, which you haven't seen. I don't doubt that, but still,
Uh,
because yeah, but yeah, and the aspirin won't will help a bit against the headache, of course, but it won't take the cause away. And the cause is in your thinking, in your feeling. That's where your cause is. And the funny thing is, once you start to help yourself, not paying too much attention, just not paying attention to those non-helping thoughts, those non-helping experiences. And we all have these. I do have them too. I sometimes get up in the morning and say, "Oh, this is a horrible day." Yeah, I can think that, but it's not going to help me. So why would I do that? Okay, what can we do next? Now let's have a shower. Okay, oh, and the shower is nice and warm. Okay, that's better. Let's carry on, and then you get a better day. It's as simple as that.
it really is. It's setting those intentions and going with them and not questioning and judging yourself a million times throughout the day. It really is
Yeah,
that simple. And I think sometimes we think that because it's simple, that we don't deserve it. That if you work really hard to get the thing, it's more valuable. And really, simple is
yes,
what's
but we
valuable.
are creations of no, whatever you would like to call it. You can call it God, you can call it universe, you can call it whatever you would like to call it. We are creations of that, and the only thing I think they want is to be the best version of ourselves, because then we help them to grow, or him, or whatever you would call it. I'm not a religious person, so I'm I'm wrestling with that. But if you look at the absolute core of religion, you see the same story. They tell the same story, but they have made a whole a layer around it, a thick layer of all kinds of habits and things, and you have to do this and that. No, you don't. Just be aware of what's going on. Increase your awareness just like this. And if you do that, your life will change. Then there's the thing about ego. We think ego is an important thing, but ego is nothing else than the culmination of all those programs you have built up through your life. It's a big database with all kinds of little routines which creates you, or at least who you think you are. But it's all based on thought. And as soon as you think, wait a minute, this is just thought, I made this up. I made this up. So I can also lose it. I don't have to think it. Nobody says I have to think it. I can think what I want. That's the only place where we're really free, in our heads. And the funny thing is, the ego, or this thing we call the ego, is trying to find back roads into your brain, trying to find back doors to see, yeah, but she might not be so nice, and you might be careful a bit, because you never know what's going to happen. You don't know. You don't have a clue of what's going to happen. We don't know. I have stopped predicting the future. I used to predict the future because I said I made a plan. I said I have to make a plan. I have to make goals and stuff like that, objectives and so on, so on. That's what I learned in consultancy. Built all those plans and yeah. Now I say I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. The sky could fall down. It won't, but could fall down. I don't know. I'll respond to that when I know it. And the funny thing is, everything's okay. And if a bus is driving at me, I'm stepping aside. I'm not going to stay there. I won't win anyway, so there's no point. So it's and the sad thing is that ego is trying to bring you back to your rational thinking, as we call it, or your brain thinking, which is useful when you are dealing with an Excel sheet. or you have to write a text, or you have to do some other work, which is useful, absolutely. And use that, please do. But also be aware that your rational thinking isn't really helping you to understand things.
I really
And sorry, go
like
ahead.
what you're talking to here because it comes up a lot in conversation, but that whole logical thinking versus the feeling, the two, people put more stock into the logical way of, because you just said, I have a plan, I have objectives, I have goals, I got to complete and execute it, and anything less than that means that I haven't achieved it. And
Yeah.
so when people have plans, they feel safety and comfort. Absence of plans, they feel
Unsure.
yeah, they feel
Yeah.
unsure, unstable. But really,
Anxious.
they just haven't built that.
Because we make ourselves dependent on the circumstances.
Yes, and that's where
We
it
so
gets
we make so
dangerous.
we create a victim role of the circumstances, which is so sad. Because nobody, yeah, a lot of people are judging you, of course, because there will be a lot of people who
Yes.
will be watching this video and say he's a complete lunatic. He'll probably die tomorrow. Yeah, I don't. I won't. The funny thing is, um, we don't know what's going to happen. So why waste energy and time on trying to work out a program and a scheme of what's going to happen? You don't know. It's a waste of time and energy. Of course, you have a direction. I'm trying to bring this message into the world. And yes, I have to be patient because it goes much slower than I wanted. When I started this 6, 7 years ago, I wanted, oh, next year I'll do this and that. And no, you won't. Because the universe or God or whoever who is controlling this has his own rules for this. And he's telling you, oh, yeah, I know, but yeah, it's not going to work that way. Because we, as human species, we need time to, to get around arms around this, to understand this, to grasp this, to make us our own. And I needed time to do that. It took me 2 years to get to a moment where I could be quiet in my head. And I worked hard to get there. So yes, it takes time. And me and all my colleagues who are doing this kind of stuff, they say this is a life journey. I will be learning this for the rest of my life. And the great thing about it is I get a little bit deeper every time. Last week I figured out this understanding about brain thinking and insightful thinking, and Sid Banks called it your personal thinking and your universal thinking. And yes, you can call it that way as well, and it's the same. We all have different terms for that, and you have to probably you'll make up your own terms of this. It's fine. It doesn't make because this is just a label. But it's important that we understand that there's something different than we think there is. And we have to understand that.
What I'm getting here, and I'm glad that you are sharing this message because a lot of us have gotten it later in life, but it's going to take a whole lifetime of this learning and recalibrating and getting to know yourself deeper and deeper, and to let go of some of the programming that we've been associated with. And because the programming and what people expect us to do, that's not going to change, but how we show up to live within this world, that's where it begins with us. And once you know that, then all of these thoughts that you're talking about that are not so helpful, they become lesser and lesser and lesser. And it's more about, what do I want? I'm going to live on my terms, and I have the power to make it a great day or a bad day. And it has
Mhm.
nothing to do with my external environment.
Yeah, and the great thing about this is we can learn this very quickly. The brain learns this stuff amazingly quickly. There's this little demonstration of Professor Arnold Seth. I don't know. He's a professor from Sussex University in the UK, and he has this demonstration. He says we are hallucinating ourselves through life, which is, he's got a point there. But he also uses a little thing where he has a distorted sequence of voice signal, which you cannot understand the first time he's playing it off. And he plays it again and said, "Yeah, I can't make anything else of it." Then he plays it in the normal, uh, corrupted version, let's call it that way. And then the next time you hear it in that corrupted version again, you can suddenly understand what he's saying, although the information hasn't changed. So your brain learns very, very quickly in seconds. Seconds. It's amazing. And it's the same as when you're looking at Facebook, where you have these messages where they have left out the vowels, and you can still read it, or they have changed the sequence of the letters, and you can, when the first and the last letters are on the right spot, I think you can still read it, something like that. And because the brain knows how to deal with that, and let it do that. It's wonderful. It's amazing what we can do with the brain. When you see something, can you imagine? When you see something, we think we are a camera which is taking things in. And yes, your eyes work like a camera. That's true. But then the image lands on your retina, the back of your eye, which is then transferred into an analog signal, a potential difference, which is then sent to the visual back of your head, where your visual cortex is. Your visual cortex is then trying to compare what's coming in to what's in your memory. So everything we see is based on your memory. So it's all old information, stale information, what we see. But still, we are able to create a different version. When I see Linda, I see someone else than, for instance, my wife. My wife's blonde, you're dark, but that doesn't matter. But still, I know who Linda is, and I know who my wife is. So something is working there, and then your brain projects that image into your brain. That's why you see things. But if there is a light source behind your head, for instance, then your face would look dark. Would very dark, difficult to discern and see where does it start, where does it end, and how's your facial expression, and so on and so on. But I could still see it. And when I took a picture with that for my camera with telephone, I would see a black disc where you are. The camera cannot change that. Your brain can, and it will. So it's manipulating what you are seeing all the time because of our system. And that's what's happening with everything. What you hear, what you smell, what you taste, what you feel, everything is manipulated by your brain because it wants you to survive. The only goal your brain has to make you survive. So everything your brain does is to try to make you survive. Scaring you is trying to make you survive. What your brain preferably would do is you sitting in the corner there and doing nothing. Then you use the least energy, least danger, and so on and so on. Yeah, nothing much of it coming out of you, and you won't get fed. You won't drink. Oh, I need to drink. Okay. So you get a drinking feeling. I need to drink now. I need to eat. So yeah. Oh, as I have a chapter in my book which is called why fried chickens won't fly into your mouth. They don't. Sadly enough, I'd love that, but so you have to do something. We have to take action to survive, and that's okay. But we have to be careful that our brain has only one goal, and that's reduce the energy you spend and survive. So when something is amiss in your feeling, it sends an information into your body and says, "Ah, this is amiss. This is not okay. You have to do something about it." No, you don't, because it will pass. If you get a scary feeling in your stomach because something scares you, is it really actually scary? Is it the guy with a knife or something like that, or whatever else it is? No, it isn't. Okay, maybe I shouldn't be scared. And sometimes you have to be scared. Yes, of course. But you'll know when to be scared. You know when to run. We know that. We have it built in.
So everything we have that goes around us, through us, is based on the memories and how our perception is going to see them. And so that is where we have the control if we choose to.
Yeah. And it's constantly checked by our brain and by our senses. Is it still okay? I'm putting my hand on the stove. Oh, maybe it's warm. Oh, it's hot. Oh, it's hot. Yes. But the funny thing is, your brain is organized in such a way that you're already retracting your hand from the hot stove before the information has really reached your head. So that's already built in. Yes, and you might still burn your hand. Yes, of course, when it's very hot.
All of this conversation has been very fascinating to bring us back to what we already know. Which is
We
kind
all
of
know this, yeah.
which is the best part of this whole conversation is we already have an inner knowing. We have these
Yeah,
memories that we're shaping. We're choosing what we get to let in and let go of, and what things are going to shape who we are and how we show up, and knowing that we have this inside of us. That's empowering. That's empowering to know that we
absolutely.
can affect our thoughts, and that
And
we
we
don't
are
have to be miserable. We can feel happy. We can do life in a much more powerful way. And so I'm just very excited and happy that you're writing this book, Being Resilient, because, you know, a resiliency journey is what how I like to refer to it. Because it does take a lifetime, and just because someone says it doesn't mean that you realize and have awareness about what this is. And so I actually would want to today to encourage anyone that's listening to us that wants to know more about how to build that resilient muscle, more to how we can recondition how we show up in the world. I'd love for you to reach out to Swier and set up some time to have a conversation to go deeper down into where we've just barely scraped the surface.
Yeah, there's much more to this, but we don't know we do not understand how superb we are as beings. We are controlling this world, not always in the best way, but we are controlling this world, and we are not the strongest animal there. Yes, we have powers, we have weapons, we have stuff like that, but as a biological animal, we are not that very strong. Although we have a very excellent long heart system, which allows us to endure stuff, and that's probably and that in the combination with our brain, the advanced brain we have compared to other animals has made us the top of the rock. Let's call it that way. But we are we are making ourselves small, and there is no need to do that. We are magnificent creatures, every one of us, each one of us, and we have to be proud of it. But just don't be obnoxious, as I sometimes am.
So it's really been a great pleasure having you here on the Men's Room Show. And we will be sharing the information so that our listeners can reach out to you. And
Go ahead,
I'd like
go
you
ahead.
to share one last message of where you would like to leave us for today.
I have a message in my looking at life, and it says consciousness creates choice. when we are conscious of what's going on, what we are thinking, what we are experiencing, what's happening to us, we get choices, because what we do is we lose the blinders we've put on ourselves. We lose them, and we suddenly see all these other options we have, which we weren't aware of when we are unconscious. We are walking through life very often quite unconscious, and that's a shame. It's really a shame, because we are so powerful. We haven't touched the top yet. There's so much more to us, and yeah, it's a shame we are still lurking in the understanding of the Middle Ages, really. And there's so much more, and we need to do this because we need to better the world in a proper way.
That is an amazing message, and you're right. We need to help our fellow mankind to be able to step into the space where we can thrive and help each other to do the same. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Linda. It was amazing to speak to you. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity.